Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in life when what we wanted walks away and we think it's the end. The relationship falls apart. The friend betrays us. The opportunity slips through our hands and our heart whispers, "Why, God, why did you let this happen?" You see, you don't always recognize divine protection when you're crying over human rejection. You call it heartbreak, but heaven calls it redirection. You call it loss, but God calls it preparation. He's not punishing you, He's positioning you. When you trust God's timing, you understand that delay is not denial. You stop fighting for people who've already exited your story. You stop begging for what God already replaced. Because when you surrender your will to His plan, He'll show you why it had to end. You see, the reason you're still standing after the storm is because there's still purpose in your life. God never removes without replacing. He never subtracts without multiplying. If something or someone left your life, it's because something greater is on the way. The problem is we often get impatient. We try to force what God is still forming. We want the promise without the process. But anything rushed will ruin you. Anything forced will fail you. God's timing isn't just about waiting. It's about becoming the person who can handle what's coming. Don't settle for what's convenient when God is preparing what's covenant. Don't cry over temporary people when eternal purpose is at stake. The one who walked away might have been good, but the one God is preparing will be divine. If you could see what God sees, if you could look beyond the heartbreak and glimpse the blueprint of your destiny, you would understand that this pain is not punishment. If it's pruning, He's cutting away what can't grow with you. He's removing what can't handle your next level. So lift your head, dry your tears, trust His timing. The one who left wasn't the end of your story. They were just the setup for your destiny. God has someone better if you trust His timing. There comes a moment in everyone's life when rejection cuts deep, when you feel the sting of being overlooked, abandoned, or forgotten. Maybe you didn't get the job you prayed for. Maybe the person you loved walked away without explanation. Maybe the door you knocked on again and again never opened. And in that painful silence, you began to wonder, what's wrong with me? Why does this keep happening? But what if I told you? Rejection is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of God's redirection. What if the door that closed was never meant to open because God was protecting you from something your eyes couldn't yet see? What if the delay, the disappointment, and the detour were not signs of defeat, but divine strategy in disguise? You see, when God allows rejection, it is not a punishment, it's preparation. He is not trying to take something from you. He's trying to position you for something greater. The rejection you experienced wasn't meant to destroy you. It was designed to develop you. It was the tool God used to push you out of what was comfortable and move you into what was purposeful. Rejection can feel cruel, but in the hands of God, becomes constructive. It tears down false attachments, false expectations, and false security so that you can be rebuilt on truth. Sometimes God will allow you to be rejected by people who don't see your value because He's preparing to connect you with those who do. He'll let you walk out of one environment so you can grow in another. If every door had opened, if every person had stayed, every plan had worked out the way you imagined, you wouldn't have grown into the person you are today. I challenge you, you wouldn't have learned to depend on God the way you do now. You wouldn't have developed strength, humility, or discernment. Rejection has a way of refining you in ways success never could. We often see rejection as loss, but it's actually God's way of clearing the path. When people walk out of your life, it's not always betrayal. Sometimes it's release. God saw conversations you didn't hear, intentions you couldn't read, and motives you couldn't sense. He knew what you didn't know, and in His mercy, He redirected your path before the wrong connection could corrupt your destiny. The truth is, you can't move forward while clinging to what God already released. Some of you are still trying to reopen doors that God already sealed shut. You're praying for Him to restore something He's already replaced. But if you could see the full picture, you would understand that His no was actually his love in disguise. When rejection hits, your first reaction may be pain, confusion, or anger. You may feel unworthy or forgotten, but those emotions are temporary. The truth is eternal. And the truth is, God has a purpose in every closed door. What you see as rejection, heaven sees as redirection toward your true calling. Let's look at it from a higher perspective. A seed has to be buried before it can bloom. In the darkness of the soil, it feels like rejection, isolated, unseen, forgotten. But under the surface, something powerful is happening. Growth is taking place. Roots are forming. What looks like the end is actually the preparation for a new beginning. That's what rejection does. It buries you for a season so that in due time, God can raise you up stronger, wiser, and more fruitful than before. God will often use rejection to shift your direction. Sometimes you're praying to be accepted in a place that was never designed to sustain you. He won't let certain opportunities succeed because he knows they would distract you from your destiny. Care enough. He won't let certain people stay because they would keep you small. The doors you thought were for you may lead to limitations, while the ones he opens will lead to elevation. When you trust that rejection is redirection, your mindset changes. You stop asking, why me? And start saying, thank you, Lord. You begin to realize that what left your life wasn't meant to last in your future. You start to praise God for the no, because you understand that his no always makes room for a better yes. Sometimes you have to lose what you wanted to discover what you needed. That job you didn't get may have been the very thing that would have trapped you in mediocrity. That person who walked away may have been the one blocking your peace. That friend who turned on you may have been the one keeping you from real growth. Rejection has a way of removing what your prayers could never release. But here's the key. Don't get bitter in the process. Don't let the pain of rejection make you close off your heart. Just because someone mishandled you doesn't mean God abandoned you. Every tear you cried, he saw it. Every night you wrestled with confusion, he heard you. And while you were questioning his plan, he was working behind the scenes, aligning connections, preparing doors, and setting divine appointments you don't even know about yet. You finally step into the place God prepared for you. You'll look back and realize why it all had to happen. You'll understand that the people who rejected you weren't your enemies. They were instruments in God's symphony. They played their part in pushing you toward purpose. If they hadn't left, you would have stayed stuck. If they hadn't said no, you would have never discovered the better yes waiting on the other side. So stop mourning over what didn't work. Stop chasing people who walked away. Stop begging to be accepted in places that were never meant to hold your destiny. Rejection was never meant to define you. It was meant to direct you. Let go of the idea that your worth is tied to people's approval. Your value doesn't decrease just because someone failed to see it. Every no you've received was God saying, I have something better. Every time you were overlooked, he was whispering, I'm saving you for something greater. You may not see it now, but one day when you're standing in the fullness of his promise, you'll realize that rejection was the best thing that ever happened to you. You'll look back and say, if they hadn't left me, I wouldn't have found me. If they hadn't rejected me, I wouldn't have discovered who God called me to be. If that door hadn't closed, I never would have walked through the one that changed my life. So today, lift your head and wipe your tears. Don't curse the rejection. Bless it, because it didn't break you, it built you. It didn't destroy you, it developed you. It was never the end. It was always the redirection. And when you finally arrive at the place God has been leading you all along, you'll realize something profound. Every rejection was a divine reroute, a sacred detour leading you straight into destiny. There's something deep inside the human heart that longs for immediate answers. We pray and expect results by tomorrow. We dream and want to see it manifest by next week. We sow seeds and expect a harvest overnight. But life and God doesn't always work that way. Sometimes the road to your promise wins through seasons of waiting, silence, and uncertainty. And in those moments, when nothing seems to move, the whisper of doubt tries to convince you that the delay means denial. But hear this truth clearly. Delay is not denial. The waiting season is not wasted time. It's the place where faith is tested, strength is built, and character is refined. You may not see movement on the surface, but deep beneath the soil of your situation, something powerful is growing. When God makes a promise, He already has the fulfillment in mind. The moment He spoke it, it was settled in heaven. But earth has a process. And sometimes that process takes time. God doesn't rush purpose because He knows that premature blessings can become heavy burdens. He's not trying to withhold anything good from you. He's preparing you to hold what's coming. Every delay has a divine reason. Maybe God is stretching your faith so it can handle the weight of your future. Maybe He's protecting you from something you can't yet see. Maybe He's still shaping the people, places, and circumstances that will align perfectly with your breakthrough. Just because you don't have it yet doesn't mean you won't have it ever. When you trust that delay is not denial, you stop living by sight and start walking by faith. You begin to understand that God's silence is not absence. His timing is not slow, it's strategic. What feels like waiting to you is working to Him. While you're worrying about how long it's taking, He's orchestrating the pieces that will make it all make sense. Think about the story of Joseph. He had a dream at 17, but it didn't come to pass until years later. In between, he was betrayed, sold, imprisoned, and forgotten. If you looked at his life during the delay, you would have thought God denied him. But the pit was preparation. But the prison was positioning. The delay was divine. Because when the time came, the very people who rejected him had to come back and recognize the hand of God on his life. That's what God does. He allows delay to develop your destiny. He uses the waiting season to work humility into your spirit and gratitude into your heart. Because when you finally step into what He promised, you'll appreciate it differently. You'll handle it with maturity, wisdom, and faith. The waiting room is not comfortable. It's quiet. It's stretching. It's full of questions. You see others getting what you've been praying for, and you wonder, when will it be my turn? You start comparing timelines, thinking you're behind. But what you don't see is that everyone's process is different. God's plan for your life has its own clock, and it doesn't run on human schedules. Sometimes the reason God delays your blessing is because He's waiting for you to grow into it. You can't put a crown on a child. It'll fall off. The blessing requires the maturity to sustain it. The delay isn't punishment. It's preparation for elevation. And sometimes God delays things because He's protecting your peace. You think you're ready, but if you received it now, it might overwhelm you. If you walked into that position too soon, it might crush you. If you connected with that person too early, it might distract you. Timing matters. God's timing is never off. It's always perfect, even when it doesn't feel that way. Remember, Abraham waited decades for the promise of a son. Moses wandered 40 years before stepping into his purpose. David was anointed as king, but waited years before wearing the crown. Every great destiny carries a waiting season, not because God is cruel, because His process is perfect. He takes time to mold your heart, strengthen your endurance, and align everything around you so that when the promise arrives, fits flawlessly. We often confuse the waiting with wasting. But waiting is not wasting when you're trusting. It's in the waiting that your faith matures. I challenge in the waiting that your prayer life deepens. It's in the waiting that you learn to stop striving and start surrendering. Waiting forces you to stop trying to control outcomes and start trusting the one who holds outcomes in His hands. Don't rush the process. Don't let impatience rob you of the lesson in the delay. Some blessings, if received too soon, would actually harm you. That relationship you wanted so badly might have pulled you away from your purpose. That job you cried over might have limited your growth. Door that didn't open may have been a trap. God sees what you can't. When He says, not yet, it's because He loves you too much to let you settle for less than His best. Faith isn't proven in the mountaintop moments. It's proven in the waiting valley. Can you still trust Him when the timeline doesn't match your expectation? Can you still worship when heaven seems silent? Can you still believe when it feels like nothing is changing? That's real faith. Not faith in outcomes, but faith in God's nature. Delay doesn't mean denial. Sometimes the greater the delay, the greater the destiny. God is not ignoring your prayers. He's answering them in a way that aligns with his perfect plan. What looks like delay to you is actually divine coordination. He's aligning people, opportunities, and timing so that everything converges at the right moment. And when that moment comes, you won't have to force it. You won't have to manipulate it. You won't have to beg for it. It will unfold naturally, gracefully, and powerfully. The very thing you've been praying for will appear, not because you chased it, but because you waited in faith for it. So if you're in a season of delay right now, don't lose hope. Keep planting seeds. Keep praying. Keep believing. Keep showing up with excellence, even when no one notices, because the same God who started the promise is faithful to finish it. He hasn't forgotten you. He's forming you. When your appointed time comes, you won't have to fight for recognition. You won't have to explain yourself. You won't have to push. The doors will open with divine ease, and everything you lost in the waiting will be restored in double measure. You'll look back and realize that the delay wasn't wasted time. It was sacred time, time that shaped you, taught you, and equipped you. Time that turned you from who you were into who you needed to be for what's coming next. So hold your peace and trust the process. Don't let impatience make you settle for something less than what God has promised. His not yet is just as powerful as his lies, because when the time is right, no force in hell, no opinion of man, no circumstance on earth can stop what God has ordained for your life. There is something inside us that struggles with waiting, especially when we feel like God has promised us something. We see glimpses of destiny, hints of purpose, signs of potential, and we want it now. We want the dream to manifest, the relationship to work, the opportunity to arrive. But here's the truth. Just because God has shown you a glimpse of the promise doesn't mean it's ready to be birthed yet. You can't force what God is still forming. We live in a world obsessed with speed. We microwave our meals, fast track our goals, and chase overnight success. The kingdom of God doesn't operate on human timelines. Heaven has its own rhythm, its own process. And when you try to rush that process, you don't accelerate your destiny, you sabotage it. You cannot rush God's craftsmanship. Everything he creates takes time. Look at how he formed the world. He could have spoken everything into existence in one instant, but instead, he took it step by step, day by day, layer by layer. Why? Because formation requires order, and when God is forming something or someone, he's not just focused on the result, he's perfecting the process. You see, there's a difference between what God promised and when God will deliver it. You might already be pregnant with purpose. The promise needs time to develop. If you rush the process, you risk giving birth prematurely. Premature blessing can't breathe outside the womb of preparation. It will suffocate under the weight of immaturity. When you try to make things happen in your own strength, you step out of alignment with divine timing. You start forcing connections that were never meant to be. You start chasing opportunities that don't carry your name. You start manipulating circumstances that God is still arranging behind the scenes. And in doing so, you delay what he's trying to deliver. God doesn't need your panic. He needs your patience. He doesn't require your control. He desires your trust. When you try to force what he's forming, you take your hands out of his and try to play the role of creator. But you were never meant to be the architect of your own destiny, only the obedient participant in his plan. Think of how clay is shaped on the potter's wheel. It must stay pliable, centered, and still in the potter's hands. The clay tries to resist or spin out of control, it loses its form. The potter must press smooth and refine it until it's ready for fire. Not before. That's how God works with us. The pressing seasons, the stretching seasons, the waiting seasons, they're all part of his formation process. If you force your way off the wheel too soon, you'll step into places you're not yet ready to sustain. Many people want the platform before they've developed the character to stand on it. They want influence before they've learned humility. They want the crown before they've carried the cross. But God is more interested in who you're becoming than what you're achieving. He's not just forming opportunities around you, he's forming integrity within you. When you try to force something, it's usually because you don't trust that God will fulfill it. You start thinking, maybe he forgot. Maybe I need to help him out. That's what Abraham and Sarah did. They received a promise of a son, but when the promise didn't arrive quickly enough, they tried to produce it through human effort. And what came out of that impatience caused generations of conflict. That's what happens when you try to force what God is forming. You create complications instead of completion. God doesn't need your manipulation. He needs your cooperation. He's the author of time, and he knows exactly when your story needs to unfold. Forcing it will never make it happen faster. It will only make it harder, because anything you build outside of God's timing will require you to sustain it without his grace. Sometimes what looks like stagnation is actually divine shaping. You might feel stuck, overlooked, or delayed, but that's because God is working in the unseen. He's developing something within you that has to be established before he can release what's A for you. He's refining your faith, strengthening your roots, and pruning your desires so that when you finally receive what you've been waiting for, you'll know how to handle it. When you trust the process, you stop trying to open doors that aren't ready. You stop chasing people who aren't meant for you. You stop begging for opportunities that don't align with your calling. Instead, you start focusing on preparation. You start working on your heart, your habits, your discipline, your mindset. Because while you're waiting for God to form it, he's waiting for you to let him form you. There's a reason some seasons feel like pressure. Pressure is part of formation. The diamond isn't created in comfort, it's forged under intensity. Caterpillar can't become a butterfly without going through isolation in the cocoon. You cut the process short if you open the cocoon too soon. The butterfly's wings won't develop, and it will never learn to fly. The same is true for your destiny. The process that feels like confinement is the very thing that's preparing you for flight. You can't fast forward through God's formation. You can't skip the waiting room and expect to handle the weight of the next room. Every step, even the slow ones, is sacred. Every delay is deliberate. Every moment is molding you for what's coming. When you stop forcing things and start trusting God, peace replaces pressure. You stop striving and start resting. You begin to understand that if it's meant for you, it won't require manipulation to maintain it. When God forms it, he also finishes it. When he builds it, he blesses it, and when it's finally time, it won't be forced, it will flow. So stop trying to rush what God is refining. Stop trying to hold on to people he's already released. Stop trying to force an opportunity that doesn't fit the stage of your growth. God knows exactly where you are and what you need. And when the time is right, you won't have to knock the door down. It will swing open by divine appointment. Maybe right now, he's forming your patience. Maybe he's forming your endurance. Maybe he's forming your spiritual maturity. Whatever it is, let him do it. Don't interrupt the formation because of frustration. Trust that he knows what he's doing. Every masterpiece takes time. The greater the purpose, the longer the preparation. And when you finally see what he's been forming, you'll realize that the waiting was never wasted. It was essential. The process didn't delay you, it developed you. So breathe, be still. Stay on the potter's wheel. Stop trying to force what only faith can birth. God is forming something beautiful, something strong, something eternal. And when he's done, it will be worth every second you waited. One of the hardest lessons to learn in life is knowing when to let go. We hold on so tightly to people, to plans, to positions, because we think if we release them, we'll lose ourselves. We cling to what's familiar, even when it's no longer fruitful. We try to revive what God has already removed, and we wonder why we feel drained, stuck, and heavy. But there comes a moment in every believer's life when God whispers, it's time to stop holding on to what's temporary. Everything in this world has a season. Friendships, jobs, opportunities, even certain relationships. They all serve a purpose, but not all of them are meant to last forever. Some things were sent to teach you, to shape you, or to strengthen you for the next level. But when that season ends, holding on doesn't preserve it. it poisons you. You see, the danger of clinging to what's temporary is that it blinds you to what's eternal. You become so focused on what you're losing that you can't see what God is trying to lead you into. You keep watering dead things, praying over expired seasons and calling it faith. But true faith doesn't mean forcing things to stay. It means trusting God enough to let them go. God will never ask you to release something unless He's already prepared something greater. The problem is, we often mistake comfort for covenant. Just because something feels familiar doesn't mean it's divine. Just because someone has been in your life for a long time doesn't mean they're assigned to your future. Longevity is not the same as destiny. When you hold on to what's temporary, you end up carrying unnecessary weight. You wonder why you're tired, why your peace is gone, why your joy feels distant. It's because you're trying to drag something that was meant to be left behind. You can't run toward your future while holding the hand of your past. You can't step into a new season while clinging to what expired in the old one. Think about the children of Israel. God delivered them from Egypt, but Egypt didn't leave their hearts. They kept looking back at what was familiar, saying, it was better there. But God had something better prepared, a land flowing with milk and honey. Yet they couldn't receive it fully because they kept longing for what was temporary. You can't inherit the promised land while craving the comfort of captivity. Sometimes God removes people, closes doors, or ends seasons not to hurt you but to heal you. He's not trying to take something good away from you. He's protecting you from what could destroy you later. The relationship that ended, the job that fell through, the plan that didn't work, none of it was punishment. It was preparation. But when you hold on to what's temporary, you reject His preparation and delay His promise. It's natural to grieve what's gone. It's okay to feel the pain of loss. But grief should lead to growth, not bondage. You can honor the past without living in it. Some of the greatest breakthroughs come right after the greatest goodbyes. When you finally release what's not meant for you, you create room for what is. Letting go isn't about giving up. It's about growing up. It's about trusting that God's wisdom is higher than your understanding. It's realizing that sometimes the very thing you're holding on to is the thing holding you back. Some relationships can't go with you because they were never built to handle your next level. Some opportunities will fade because they're too small for the capacity God is expanding in you. When God calls you forward, everything connected to your purpose will move with you. Anything that falls away wasn't supposed to stay. You don't have to beg people to understand your journey. You don't have to convince them to see your value. The right people will recognize your worth without persuasion. The wrong ones will exit when their assignment in your story is complete. Let them. Holding on to what's temporary often comes from fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of the unknown. Faith and fear cannot live in the same heart. Faith says, even if I don't see what's next, I trust that God does. Faith says, if He asked me to let it go, it's because He's making space for something better. The truth is, what's eternal will never leave you. God's presence, His promises, His purpose, those things remain. They are the anchor of your soul when everything else shifts. People may walk away, seasons may change, doors may close, but God's plan for you remains unshaken. There's a kind of peace that comes when you finally stop fighting for what's fading. When you stop chasing people who stop caring. When you stop trying to rebuild something God already allowed to break. Peace doesn't come from understanding the why. It comes from trusting the ooh. You may not know why something ended, but you can rest in knowing that the one who wrote your story never makes mistakes. You can't pour new wine into old wineskins. You can't carry new blessings in old mindsets. You can't live in resurrection power while still chained to what's dead. God wants to do something new in you, but new requires a space. He can't fill hands that are already holding on to what He's asking you to release. Sometimes what you're calling heartbreak is actually holy release. Sometimes what you're calling loss is divine liberation. God knows what needs to leave so that his purpose can live. Don't fight his pruning. The branch that refuses to be trimmed will never bear more fruit. The beauty of letting go is that it teaches you trust on a deeper level. It teaches you that your worth doesn't depend on who stays. It reminds you that endings are often beginnings in disguise. You can walk away without resentment. You can move forward without bitterness. You can thank God even for the closed doors, because you know that every exit is an entrance to something new. So stop holding on to what's temporary. Stop replaying old conversations. Stop mourning what could have been, and stop doubting what's ahead. Lift your eyes. The future is calling. It's brighter than you think. What God has for you will not pass you by. The things that left your life were never meant to define you. They were meant to refine you. You're not losing. You're being led. You're not abandoned. You're being advanced. The door that closed didn't end your story, it redirected it. And when you finally release what's temporary, you'll realize that the hand of God was guiding you the entire time. So today, make a decision to let go, not out of frustration, but out of faith. Trust that every ending is a setup for a new beginning. And when you look back later, you'll see that what you thought was a loss was actually the greatest gift of all. The freedom to walk in everything God truly intended for you. There are moments in life when something you loved, wanted, or worked for slips right through your hands. The relationship ends, the job disappears, plan collapses. You stand there, heartbroken and confused, asking why God? Why would you take that from me? You thought that was it, the one, the opportunity, the dream. And yet, somehow God closed the door. But here's the truth that will change your perspective forever. Oz, when God removes something, it's only because he intends to replace it with something better. You see, God doesn't subtract to leave you empty. He subtracts to make space. What you see as loss is often divine exchange. He never takes without giving, never ends without beginning, never removes without replacing. The replacement isn't always immediate, and that's where faith must stand in the gap. When you're in the middle of a loss, it's hard to imagine anything better. Pain blurs your vision. You only see what's gone, not what's coming. You replay memories. You question decisions. You second guess yourself, and sometimes you even question God. What you don't realize is that his replacements are never of equal value. They're always upgrades. The reason God had to remove it is because it could no longer carry you to where he's taking you. You've outgrown some people, outlasted some seasons, outlived some opportunities. What once fit you perfectly now feels tight and restrictive. And if God allowed you to stay there, you'd never step into the fullness of who you're meant to become. So in his love, he interrupts your comfort to introduce your calling. Think about the story of Job. He lost everything, his family, his fortune, his health. From the outside, it looked like tragedy. But in God's design, it was transformation. When the storm passed, Job received double for his trouble. What he thought was devastation became elevation. That's how God works. His replacements come wrapped in restoration. Sometimes God replaces relationships. That person you thought you couldn't live without, the one who left, betrayed, or abandoned you, was never meant to stay forever. Maybe they played their role in your story, and now it's time for their exit. When someone walks away, don't chase them. Don't beg for what God already released. Because if they could walk away, they were never anchored by purpose, only by preference. When you trust God's hand, you understand that he never removes someone without preparing someone better. Not necessarily better in looks, status, or personality, but better for you, better for your growth, your peace, your purpose. Someone who will pray with you, build with you, and walk beside you in the divine direction God has set. God's replacement always aligns with destiny. He doesn't give you what looks good. He gives you what is good. Sometimes that means waiting. Sometimes that means healing. Sometimes means being alone long enough to realize that his presence is enough before any new person ever arrives. And it's not just about people. Sometimes God replaces your plans. You thought you'd be married by now, or own that business, or reach that goal. But the timeline didn't go your way. The disappointment stings. Yet while you're mourning the plan that fell apart, God is building one that will make sense of everything you lost. His plan doesn't just restore what was broken, it redefines it. The truth is, God doesn't recycle, He renews. He doesn't give you back the same thing in a different form. He gives you something altogether anew. But before He can do that, you must release what you've been holding onto. You can't receive with clenched fists. You can't embrace the new while you're still gripping the old. Sometimes the replacement isn't physical, it's spiritual. God may remove your dependence on people to replace it with deeper dependence on Him. He may take away a source of income to remind you that He is your provider. He may close a door to teach you that His presence is the only door that truly matters. Every divine replacement is not about comfort, it's about correction, alignment, and growth. When you surrender your idea of better to God's definition of better, everything changes. Because what we call better often revolves around ease, pleasure, or success. But what God calls better is anything that makes you more like Him, more patient, more faithful, more humble, more whole. Sometimes that means He'll replace comfort with challenge so your faith grows muscles you didn't know you had. Resist divine replacements because they don't look how you expected. The new season may not look as glamorous as the old one at first. But if you stay faithful, you'll see that God was building something deeper than appearances. You'll realize that He was trading temporary satisfaction for eternal stability. When the Israelites left Egypt, they cried for the food of their past because they didn't recognize the value of what was coming. They longed for what was familiar while God was leading them to what was fruitful. Don't make the same mistake. Don't cry over the manna you lost when milk and honey are waiting ahead. It's natural to feel pain when something ends. Doesn't expect you to be emotionless. He expects you to be trusting. Grieve the loss, yes, but don't glorify it. You can acknowledge the beauty of what was without missing the blessing of what will be. What's coming is greater than what's gone because God's fingerprints are all over it. Sometimes the reason His replacement feels delayed is because He's still preparing you to receive it. You can't handle the blessing if you're still broken from the last battle. So He takes time to heal your heart, renew your mind, and rebuild your confidence. That's not punishment, that's preparation. And when the replacement finally comes, when the new door opens, when the new person enters, when the new opportunity appears, you'll understand why it took so long. You'll look back and say, now I see it, Lord. That's why you closed that door. That's why you ended that season. You weren't rejecting me, you were redirecting me. God's replacement is always better because His perspective is eternal. He sees what you can't. He knows what's coming down the road, the dangers, the distractions, the detours. His decisions are not emotional, they're intentional. So when He replaces something, it's never random. It's always right on time and right on target. You may not understand it now. One day you'll thank Him for every no that made room for a greater wise. You'll thank Him for the heartbreak that taught you to heal. You thank Him for the job that didn't work out because it made you discover your purpose. You'll thank Him for the delay that pushed you into destiny. So stop trying to resurrect what God has released. Stop crying over what He already replaced. Lift your eyes from what's gone and fix them on what's growing. Because what God is preparing for you, whether it's a person, a place, or a purpose, will make you forget the pain of what you lost. When a promise arrives, you'll understand that His hand was never against you, it was guiding you. And you'll say with confidence, God's replacement was not just better, it was perfect.